trust is something that's vital. It's vital as a part of resilience. And when you've got trust, you can investigate some difficult things, which you might need to do when you see people who are suffering through lack of resilience or burnout. So that's what we'll look at now. Trust is key. All right. So let's start with trust. So at the beginning of this trust section, what we're going to do is watch this video of Cirque du Soleil doing a little high wire act. And I would like you, as you watch it, to think, okay, what is it that contributes to this happening? Okay, so what is it that contributes to this happening? This particular thing. And what is it that builds, what is it that enables the performance to happen in relationship to trust? Let's put trust in there. So what is it that enables that to happen? Because to me that's an ultimate expression of trust. So what does it take?
Training.
Training.
Skills.
Say some more.
Experience.
So the training and the experience kind of go together, don't they, really?
Motivation.
Got to want to do it. Yep.
Total commitment.
Just hang on just a minute. Let's go into the experience and the training, because there's a key part of the experience and the training that matters.
It's the relationships. And that's,
Yep, we've got the relationships. Yep.
it's doing it so many times that you stop thinking about it.
It's the repetition.
Your muscle memory.
Yep. But what has to happen for that to happen?
You have to have failed.
Right. You have to have failed quite a lot. You have to have soared through the air and not grabbed somebody's hands. Right? So what does...
Big net beneath them.
Sorry?
With a big net beneath them.
With a big net, right, yeah, there is. And there's some really nice footage of them in training with a harness on, so that when they're not caught, they're just dangling on the end of a harness. Okay. So that tells you about what else it takes, which is support. Right? This doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a load of other people helping you to make that happen. So it takes support.
They didn't intend to drop you. Their intention had always been to try and catch you. You know.
Right. So a positive intention.
Yeah.
What is it about when you get a marital partnership
Mhm.
in some of these circuses, and things aren't going well that day, and you have to go out and perform? There is something about putting that to one side,
Yeah.
so you can.
Professionalism.
Yes.
Yes.
But
Focus.
It's devoting all to the performance, isn't it? Right, it's giving...
So,
Yeah, exactly. Getting in the zone.
Getting into flow.
Getting in flow. Yeah. Oops, I wasn't focusing there. Okay.
and their timing was exact.
Right, the
Within a
timing.
millimetre, millisecond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is something super important about trust, because it's split second. It is in the moment. So you know what it's like when you're in a meeting and somebody takes credit for something that you've done. Right, that is an in-the-moment trust buster.
yeah.
Because they didn't have to do it, but they did it. So the thing, there's a Dutch saying that trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. Because it's slow to build but quick to lose. Um,
And vulnerability.
vulnerability, it's okay to put
You
yourself
have
out
to
there.
be vulnerable. You have to put yourself out in the air, or else there's no show.
You have to put yourself out there. Now, that's what one of the explanations of trust is. It means that you will take a risk in the expectation that something good and positive will be returned to you. So that's the vulnerability part of trust, which is why it's difficult. Because who's going to go first? You're going to, am I going to come to you and disclose something to you first, and then you disclose back to me? Because that's the way it works. So if you give something, reciprocation is the usual thing to happen. So you know exactly when it's not. Yes.
It's also having confidence, isn't it, in each other? And I say that because as I watched that, I did a skydive a couple of years ago, and I'm terrified of heights. And I jumped out of an aeroplane at quite a height with a guy who I was attached to, obviously. And the trust, I had to trust him, because it was a split second. The minute he pushed me, I was in the middle of the air. But so that trust in his skill and knowledge was absolutely paramount to enable me to do what I did.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So the confidence and actually following the instruction and the precision of the instruction that you're given when you're going to do something like that. And that it's the same skill set, although I was incompetent and he was competent and they're all competent, but it's those same skills that lead to the trust, isn't it?
It's the same skills that lead to the trust. But again, you're right, it's that momentary thing, isn't it? So all these things are behind something that looks actually quite simple. Now, we know that trust, it's a secondary emotion. You're not born trusting, you learn it. And one of the ways that we learn it is, you see tiny babies and they drop things over the side and you pick them up and give them back. Right? There's two things to that. That's agency, right? They're learning they've got some control and some influence in their situation, which is a hugely important lesson. And secondly, it's a trust thing, right? Is this going to happen? I'm going to do it again. Let's test you. Let's keep doing it. It's a really important lesson. So for trust, because we respond differently in different situations. So now there's a personality part of trust too, which we're going to explore in just a sec. Now, something really important in your worlds is trilogy of trust. You're all in positions of responsibility, are you not? And you have relationships with people who are in positions of responsibility as well. So trust can be loaned, and it's a really important thing about how do you loan trust. By that I mean, so I've known Heather now for a couple of years, and Heather might introduce me to, somebody who I say, I'd like to meet X. And you might then say, all right, I'll introduce you. And in that, she's loaning me her trust. So if I go in and I behave abominably, right, I've affected the relationship that the person I'm being met with Heather. She's loaned me her trust, I've let her down. So that's almost impossible. You do that once for somebody and you never do that again. So you have to be careful in your world of work about who are you going to loan your trust to. Because sometimes when people are not feeling resilient, let's connect it back, they may not behave in a way that you expect. So you just need to think about, okay, what am I going to do with this and how am I going to do it? So I walk into a room with you, first time we've ever met and I'm working with you, right? New project team.
Get to know.
Get to know. How do you do that? What do you do?
What's questions?
Curious, ask questions.
Develop a relationship.
But you disclose something. So the main thing is you tell people a little something about you and then you see, do they do the same to you? So that's how we do it. We test, right? I'm giving you something, do I get something back? And if you don't, then you go, okay, right, I'm not going any further with that one. So it's this little bit of disclosure. So the question is, when you meet someone new, what are you going to disclose? What do they disclose to you? I feel uncomfortable. This is a bit weird. An insight into about how they're feeling about a situation, or a difficult something that they've had, or a time when they didn't do their best. It's those tiny little vignettes that you get about someone. You go, okay, they're reaching out to me here. They're trying to make a relationship. So it's the shared vulnerability that puts us on the same wavelength as somebody. And that looks like there's some really interesting work by a guy called Yuri Hasson. His research is up there. And what he's done is, it's really interesting. He got people in an MRI scanner and asked them to tell stories. 2 people. So there was a storyteller, there was the listener. And he was looking at what was happening to their brainwaves. And what was happening is that as the storyteller started, so the listener brainwaves started to match, and the different same areas of the brain light up. And then what happened was that the listener started to anticipate what was going to happen before the speaker. So that literally you are experiencing the same thing as somebody else. So that shared disclosure thing and the storytelling and the vignette is how we are putting ourselves on the same brain wavelength as somebody else. That's why we're doing it. Now, he did a repetition of this experiment, which is quite interesting, as he said, all right, maybe it's just a language, maybe there's something else in there, maybe there's some confounding variables. So what he did was he had a Russian speaker then go in and start telling a story in Russian. The answer was nothing happened. Okay, so we do not then align. So it's about we start to experience it ourselves, the empathy bit. So I think that is part. And if you want to know more about vulnerability, she's called Brené Brown. I'm sure some of you have seen her on TED. So trust. Can you rebuild it? Hands up if you think you can rebuild trust. Hands up if you think you can rebuild trust. Sorry. Semi hand up. Kind of. Ish. It depends. What's the ishness?
I don't think you're building into the same relationship.
Okay.
You're
So-
rebuilding a relationship, not the trust.
You're rebuilding a relationship and not the trust. Okay. You want to say?
Well, that I was going to say more or less the same. It's, I think, in a work situation, you have to make efforts to rebuild a relationship.
A relationship, whether that's just a relationship or whether the trust grows again, I don't know. But in work, especially in a senior position, you have to do what you can to make it work.
To make it work. Okay, so now we're all thinking about a normal working relationship, aren't we? But I want to now stick a spanner in the works. What about people who are low in resilience? So if you're working with somebody with low resilience, right, they may not follow through on what you've agreed, because most of us work through promise-based execution, by which I mean that if I say to Anna, I'm going to get you that email by 5 o'clock on Tuesday, I get you the email probably by 4:30 on Tuesday. I don't give it to you by 11 o'clock on Friday, right? Otherwise, I'm on to not delivering on my promises and breaking trust. But when people are low in resilience, one of the indicators is that they don't do what they say they're going to do.
I think that's what I mean by rebuilding
Yes.
the relationship. Because
Right.
then you have to redefine it. So you move from a position where you think you can depend on somebody
Yeah.
to one where you're going to excuse a
Yes.
behaviour that previously would have been unacceptable because you recognise they've got a level of need or vulnerability that wasn't part of your original expectation of them.
Yes. So what's happening is the boundaries are changing. Okay, so you start off with boundaries like this, and then you go, all right, actually it's looking like that. It's a bit smaller and it's a different shape. But you might first of all start off by going, whoa, what's happening here? So readiness to disclose is a big part of trust, isn't it? So we've got readiness. So I can coach and coach and coach somebody, but if they're not ready, nothing's going to change. So readiness. We've got readiness as part of that. So you might find out on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are we to really address this? How ready are you? Okay. So that's trust. What else do we want to say about trust?
I think understanding's a really big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can understand why somebody has broken your trust or hasn't done something that they said they would, then I think it's an awful lot easier to
Yeah.
move forward from. Sorry.
That's me
Just do it
finished.
again, if you can.
All right. I forgot what I said now.
Understanding.
So, yeah, I think understanding's a big part of it, because for me, if I can understand why somebody's not done something, or you know, what's going on with them, then I think it's an awful lot easier to move forward and
Yeah.
to rebuild that relationship or that trust. Or
And I think there's something that's a big part for me, which nobody's touched on. Just say sorry. If someone says sorry to me, it goes a long way to diffusing a situation. And it's so simple. What is it about us Brits that we find sorry so difficult? So here's a sorry that I got from someone trying to sell me professional services. I'm sorry if I offended you. What's that?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry if.
Yeah.
That's called a non-apology apology. Because he did offend me. There is no if. So a non-apology apology. Nobody could be sorrier than I that we're in this situation.
Yes.
I'm sorry if you're feeling like that.
Yeah.
Sorry that.
Yeah. Sorry, but. Okay, so sorry is a great way of getting ourselves through, but we have to be prepared to put our pride to one side. So I think I'm going to leave trust at that. Is that okay?
Yeah.